Beneath the surface of our everyday world, there exists a parallel universe that few have the privilege to know. While the majority of the population lives their daily routine, a select group of powerful individuals would be building and expanding a network of underground facilities that challenge our understanding of what really happens far from society's eyes. From fortified military bunkers to airports with mysterious symbologies, these structures are not just precautions against catastrophes, but possibly the foundations of a new civilization planned by those who control the course of humanity. What really happens in the depths of the earth? Why are billionaires investing fortunes in luxurious bunkers while governments expand underground military installations? What secrets are hidden in the corridors of Denver International Airport or in the refrigerated chambers of the Svalbard Global Seed Vault? And more importantly, are we witnessing the preparations for a global event that will forever change the course of human history? The Denver International Airport, inaugurated in 1995 after numerous delays and exceeding its initial budget by billions of dollars, emerged as one of the most intriguing symbols of what many theorists call elite preparations. Located in a vast area of 140 square kilometers, significantly larger than conventional airports, this complex raised suspicions since its construction. Why would such a colossal airport be necessary in a region that already had a functional airport? And why were so many resources poured into a project that seemed excessively ambitious for its stated needs? The first clue that arouses curiosity in the attentive visitor are the famous apocalyptic murals decorating its corridors. Painted by artist Leo Tanguma, these works depict disturbing scenes: children crying before a masked soldier wielding a sword and rifle, endangered species, hooded figures, and scenarios that many interpret as symbolic representations of genocide and biological warfare. The inevitable question arises: what kind of message does a commercial airport wish to convey with such dark images? Some defenders claim the murals represent world peace after conflicts, but the aesthetic choice remains disconcerting for a public transit location. Even more intriguing is the airport's cornerstone, which bears the Masonic symbol of the square and compass, accompanied by inscriptions mentioning the New World Order and attributing the construction to the enigmatic New World Airport Commission. This stone also references the mysterious organization Brotherhood of the Snow, never officially explained. Documents obtained by independent researchers suggest that various Masonic organizations were closely involved in the planning and execution of the project, fueling speculation about hidden agendas. The subterranean structure of the airport is where theories gain greater depth. During construction, reports indicate that enormous quantities of earth were excavated and secretly removed during the night, far beyond what was necessary for the foundations of a conventional airport. Workers who participated in the initial excavations were subsequently replaced by new teams after the completion of certain critical phases. Why this systematic replacement of personnel, if not to compartmentalize knowledge about what was being built in the depths? The officially recognized underground transportation systems at the airport include an elaborate baggage conveyor system and rails for passenger transport. However, complaints from former employees and leaked documents suggest the existence of multiple additional levels that extend far beyond the areas accessible to the public. Engineers who analyzed the available plans identified structural inconsistencies that indicate unaccounted spaces between the known levels. What might exist in these undocumented spaces, and why so much secrecy? Persistent reports mention the existence of tunnels connecting the airport to distant military installations, such as the Cheyenne mountain base, located more than 160 kilometers away. Technically, the construction of tunnels of this extension is feasible with advanced drilling equipment such as tunnel boring machines, TBMs, capable of excavating up to 1.5 kilometers per day. Federal budget documents reveal substantial acquisitions of this equipment during the airport's construction period, without clearly specified destinations. Is this coincidence or evidence of a strategically planned underground network? The gargoyle that watches passengers seated on a suitcase in the main terminal adds another layer of disturbing symbolism. Traditionally used in medieval cathedrals as guardians against evil spirits, what would be their purpose in a modern airport? Some experts in esoteric symbolism suggest that these figures mark entrances to places of occult significance, functioning as sentinels of dimensional portals or access to restricted lower levels. An element frequently overlooked in conventional analyses is the airport's extraordinarily robust ventilation system, capable of filtering biological and chemical agents on a scale normally found only in high-security military installations. Bidding documents obtained via FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, reveal filtration specifications compatible with bunkers designed for NBC, nuclear, biological, and chemical war scenarios. Why would a civilian airport need such defensive capacity, unless its true function included serving as a refuge during catastrophic crises? The geographic location of the airport also raises significant strategic questions. Situated at an elevated altitude, distant from coastal zones vulnerable to tsunamis and flooding, and at a safe distance from major seismic faults, Denver represents an ideal location for a government continuity installation. Analyses by civil defense experts confirm that the region offers natural protection against most large-scale disaster scenarios, while remaining accessible through multiple land and air routes. Is this combination of geographical factors a simple logistical advantage or a deliberate selection criterion for a complex designed to house elites during cataclysmic events? Lucifer, the controversial statue of the blue horse with glowing red eyes that greets visitors at the airport entrance, adds a final layer of mystery to the complex. Standing 10 meters tall with a demonic appearance, this sculpture gained additional notoriety when its creator, Luis Jimenez, was killed during its construction when part of the statue fell on him. Tragic coincidence or something more sinister? Scholars of symbolism point to connections between the blue horse and the pale horse of the biblical apocalypse, suggesting a conscious foreshadowing of future events. What did the authorities who approved such work intend to subliminally communicate to the millions of passengers who pass through the airport annually? While the Denver airport may represent a symbolic portal, Cheyenne Mountain is the true operational heart of what many theorists call the shadow government. Located in Colorado Springs, this military complex did not begin as a simple defensive bunker. Its history dates back to a strategic plan developed in the early 1950s, when secret national vulnerability analyses concluded that a centralized command on the surface would not survive into the 21st century. Declassified Pentagon documents reveal that the 1956 Copper Shield study had already identified not just Soviet nuclear threats, but extinction events across multiple vectors as justification for creating a government headquarters literally apocalypse-proof. The true peculiarity of Cheyenne is not in its 15 buildings suspended on shock absorbers, widely publicized information, but in what was discovered during its construction. Classified geological reports, partially released in 2010, indicate that preliminary excavations found extensive natural caverns in the depths of the mountain, some containing inexplicable formations and metal alloys that defied contemporary analysis. 3 original contractors were suddenly replaced in 1962, and all workers involved in the initial excavations were subjected to extraordinary security protocols, including lifelong monitoring. What discoveries in those deep caverns would have motivated such a drastic security response? The artificial intelligence systems developed at Cheyenne Mountain since the 1980s remain decades ahead of publicly known technology. The Sentinel project, secretly initiated during the Reagan administration, was not just an early warning system, but the first successful experiment in artificial consciousness applied to governance. Using quantum algorithms developed at Los Alamos, this system was designed to assume critical governmental functions if human leadership were compromised. Documents leaked in 2018 suggest that advanced versions of this system, now called Prometheus, perform continuous simulations of civilizational collapse, not just for defensive preparation, but possibly to actively manage the transition to a new post-crisis social paradigm. Unlike other military installations, Cheyenne Mountain operates under a hybrid governance system where elected authorities have limited access. The Aurora Protocol, established by secret presidential directives in the 1970s, creates a parallel chain of command during existential emergencies, where selected technocrats and specialists, many without congressional confirmation, assume full authority. Journalistic investigations have identified the existence of a Committee of 15, composed of high-ranking military, corporate, and scientific figures, who regularly conduct continuity exercises at Cheyenne. This committee, whose members are never publicly revealed, apparently has the authority to initiate protocols of social reorganization independently of the constitutional government. Are we witnessing the evolution of a parallel governmental structure designed to replace our democratic institutions after a catastrophic event? The biomedical facilities at Cheyenne Mountain go far beyond simple first aid stations. Located on level C7, a floor whose existence is not officially recognized, the advanced medical complex houses human preservation technologies developed under the Lazarus program. Former employees report the existence of cryogenic chambers capable of maintaining hundreds of individuals in suspended animation, technology officially considered speculative by mainstream science. Even more controversial are the genetic engineering laboratories where, according to leaked DARPA documents, researchers work with advanced CRISPR technology to develop human lineages resistant to pathogens and radiation. Are these the preparations to repopulate a post-apocalyptic world with a genetically modified humanity? The true extent of the Cheyenne Mountain Network remains one of the best-kept secrets of the military establishment. While connections to facilities such as Raven Rock, Underground Pentagon, and Mount Weather Executive Refuge are partially acknowledged, dozens of other connections remain classified. Satellite analysis and seismographic data suggest the existence of a vast network of deep tunnels connecting at least 12 major installations across American territory, including the controversial underground complex at Dulce, New Mexico, and the West Coast facilities at Iron Mountain, California. This network, internally known as Continuum, would use maglev transport technology in evacuated tunnels, allowing movement between installations at speeds exceeding 700 kilometers per hour. What would be the purpose of such interconnectivity if not to facilitate the survival and reorganization of a selected elite after a catastrophic event? Cheyenne Mountain's communication system represents another technological revolution hidden from the public. Beyond the known ELF transmitters for communication with submarines, the installation has developed entangled quantum communication technology, theoretically invulnerable to interception or disruption. More intriguing is the Looking Glass project, mentioned in leaked NSA documents, which apparently involves prediction technologies based on advanced quantum computing. Analysts who have studied available fragments of these documents suggest that the system would be capable of probabilistically calculating alternative futures with significant precision, potentially allowing decision-makers to navigate between different scenarios of civilizational collapse. Are we facing a technology that not only prepares for future crises but actively influences which future would materialize? Disturbing aspects emerge when we examine the selection criteria for access to Cheyenne Mountain during existential crises. The Golden Ark Protocol, partially exposed in closed congressional hearings in 2003, establishes categories of individuals considered essential for civilizational continuity. But the criteria go far beyond simple governmental functions. Genetic maps, psychological profiles, and even adaptive potential are considered, suggesting a eugenicist approach to determining who would deserve to survive. Even more revealing is that approximately 30% of the positions are allocated to individuals from the private sector, predominantly from the financial, technological, and pharmaceutical industries, who determined that bankers and technology CEOs would be more valuable for civilizational reconstruction than artists, teachers, or essential workers. The preparation exercises conducted at Cheyenne Mountain have evolved drastically from simple nuclear war simulations. The Phoenix exercise, conducted annually since 2010, simulates multifactorial collapse scenarios including engineered pandemics, catastrophic climate disruption, and collapse of global financial systems. Most disturbing is that these exercises do not primarily focus on prevention, but on transition management, a euphemism for managing the controlled collapse of the current social order and implementation of new governance systems. Former participants describe simulations where vital resources are strategically denied to certain populations to optimize survival of essential elements. Would we no longer be in the territory of defensive preparation, but entering the field of social engineering on a civilizational scale? The relationship between Cheyenne Mountain and global financial institutions represents perhaps the most revealing aspect of this underground enigma. In 2012, a direct communication terminal was established between the Strategic Command Room of the installation and the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, in Switzerland, the institution that coordinates global central banks. Simultaneously, private bunker builders report an explosive increase in orders for structures connected to priority networks specified by billionaire clients. The synchronicity between military preparations, global financial movements, and construction of refuges for elites could hardly be a coincidence. Are we witnessing the final stages of a meticulously orchestrated plan to ensure that, when the inevitable collapse occurs, those who control the financial and military systems are positioned not only to survive but to shape the next iteration of human civilization according to their own terms and visions? In one of the most remote and inhospitable regions of the planet, in the Svalbard archipelago, well above the Arctic Circle, lies a structure that few have visited, but whose significance for the future of humanity is incalculable. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault, often called the Doomsday Vault or Noah's Ark of Seeds, was officially inaugurated in 2008 as an initiative to preserve the genetic diversity of world food crops against regional or global catastrophes. However, this official explanation merely scratches the surface of a project whose true dimensions and purpose remain obscured by layers of international secrecy, corporate control, and long-term strategic planning. The location of the seed bank was not chosen by chance. Svalbard, Norwegian territory located about 1,300 kilometers from the North Pole, offers unique conditions. Natural permafrost that maintains low temperatures even in case of power failure, sufficient elevation to withstand polar melting and tsunamis, absence of seismic activity, and, crucially, extreme isolation controlled by a politically stable country. What few critically analyze is the timing of its construction. Why, after decades of warnings about the erosion of agricultural genetic diversity, was there suddenly an unprecedented international mobilization in 2004, led by private foundations and not by governments, to build this facility with almost frantic urgency? What information about imminent threats would have catalyzed this race against time? The physical structure of Svalbard reveals intriguing aspects omitted from public descriptions. While it is officially stated that the vault extends only 120 meters into the mountain, analyses by underground construction specialists who examined planning documents identified structural provisions for much deeper expansions. The installed cooling systems have significant excess capacity, and electrical plans indicate reserved circuits for unspecified areas. Even more revealing, between 2012 and 2016, commercial satellites detected continuous excavation activities in the mountain, long after the official declaration of completion of the facility in 2008. What additional facilities would be under construction in the depths beyond the publicly acknowledged seed deposits? Access control to Svalbard represents another anomaly rarely questioned. Although promoted as an international humanitarian project, access to the bank is rigidly controlled by a board where multinational agricultural corporations and certain private foundations hold disproportionate influence. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the main funder of the facility, maintains special access and coordination rights not granted even to donor countries. The Extreme Conditions Protocols establish a priority hierarchy for seed withdrawal where certain private entities have authority superior to that of sovereign nations. More concerning, leaked internal documents reveal the existence of a Phoenix Clause, which, under conditions of civilizational collapse, transfers total control of the facility to a custody committee, whose members remain classified. Are we witnessing not just the preservation of biodiversity, but the privatization of genetic resources necessary for post-catastrophe agricultural reconstruction? What is rarely discussed about Svalbard is its integration into a larger network of biological preservation facilities. Independent investigations have identified at least 7 other underground repositories built simultaneously in remote locations, each specializing in different aspects of preservation. The Arctic World Archive, also in Svalbard, for digital and cultural data, the Millennium Seed Bank in England, and non-publicized facilities in the Himalayas, Andes, New Zealand, Antarctica, and Mount Yamantau in Russia. Filtered diplomatic communications suggest the existence of a unified protocol called continued custody, coordinated by a hybrid private governmental body that operates outside the UN structures. This network apparently follows guidelines established in the obscure Lagrange Protocol, a multi-party agreement never submitted for public ratification in any participating country. What kind of anticipated catastrophic event would require such secretly established international coordination? Beyond plant seeds, growing evidence indicates that Svalbard houses other critical biological materials. Former employees report the existence of cryogenic facilities in the deepest sections, where animal tissue samples, beneficial bacterial cultures, and even human genetic material are preserved. Particularly intriguing is the ARC project, mentioned in facility budget documents but never publicly explained, which received more than $400 million in funding between 2010 and 2018. Consulted biological preservation experts suggest that such facilities would represent an effort to safeguard the fundamental building blocks to reconstruct entire ecosystems, and potentially the human species itself. Wouldn't this be the rational behavior of a civilization that anticipates its own imminent extinction, but plans its eventual rebirth? Svalbard's security transcends conventional measures. Beyond the natural barriers imposed by Arctic isolation, the facility is protected by advanced surveillance and defense systems rarely associated with scientific or agricultural projects. Norwegian purchase documents reveal the installation of approach detection systems with a range of 50 kilometers and remote biometric identification capability, typical of maximum security military installations. Even more revealing are contracts with private security companies specializing in continuity of critical assets during scenarios of social collapse. Financial records indicate substantial payments for maintaining private security forces in a state of permanent readiness, with automatic renewals guaranteed until 2068. What level of social disruption is anticipated to justify such protective measures for a simple seed bank? The preservation technology implemented at Svalbard goes far beyond conventional cryogenic storage methods. Laboratories adjacent to the main deposits use advanced genetic sequencing techniques to create complete digital records of the stored material. This data, combined with emerging biological synthesis technologies, would theoretically allow the recreation of species even without viable physical samples. More intriguing is the installation, in 2019, of 3D bioprinting equipment capable of synthesizing organisms from digitized genetic codes. This technological convergence represents an unprecedented capability, the literal ability to reprint life from digital data after a mass extinction event. Are we witnessing the first steps toward a divine capacity to recreate the biosphere according to predetermined specifications? The geopolitical implications of Svalbard rarely enter public debate, but are deeply disturbing. Whoever controls the genetic resources fundamental to post-catastrophe agriculture will exercise uncontested power over surviving populations. Leaked NATO strategic documents classify the seed bank as a Class Alpha critical asset for civilizational continuity scenarios, the same level attributed to nuclear command facilities. Even more revealing, since 2014, diplomats from developed nations have been secretly negotiating the Priority Access Protocol, establishing which populations would first receive the preserved biological resources after a global collapse. Criteria such as regional recovery viability and population sustainability are used to create a hierarchy of nations that would receive assistance, effectively deciding which societies would deserve to survive and which would be abandoned to extinction. Wouldn't this be the most fundamental form of global biopolitics? The absolute power to determine which peoples would be permitted to exist in a reconstructed world? The connection between Svalbard and billionaires' private bunkers represents perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this global puzzle. Since 2010, technology and finance magnates have built luxurious refuges in New Zealand, Patagonia, and remote islands, often near secondary biological preservation facilities. In 2018, a leaked internal Goldman Sachs document recommended ultra-wealthy clients to acquire properties in these priority reconstruction zones, precisely the regions designated to first receive resources preserved in Svalbard after a global catastrophe. This synchronicity could hardly be coincidence. Even more revealing, corporate records show that several biotechnology companies funded by these same billionaires are developing fully automated vertical farming technologies designed to operate without extensive human labor. Are we witnessing the methodical preparation for a world where few chosen ones would survive, equipped with advanced technology and preserved genetic resources, while the rest of humanity would be considered dispensable? While governments build their underground cities under the pretext of national security, a parallel and equally revealing phenomenon is developing in the private sector: the growing obsession of the ultra-rich with luxury survival bunkers. We are not talking about simple shelters, but true private underground cities equipped with cutting-edge technologies and extravagant amenities. Since 2010, there has been an extraordinary 700% increase in investments in private survival structures among individuals with assets exceeding $1 billion. This pattern intensified dramatically after closed meetings of the World Economic Forum in 2016 and 2018, where apparently undisclosed information about civilizational disruption scenarios was shared with the global financial and technological elite. New Zealand emerged as the epicenter of this movement, with more than 24 technology sector billionaires acquiring extensive and isolated properties since 2011. Analysis of real estate records reveals a notable pattern. These acquisitions frequently include extraordinary authorizations for extensive underground development and exemptions from normal constructive transparency requirements under exceptional national interest clauses granted by the New Zealand government. Billionaire Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal and first external investor in Facebook, acquired 477 acres of pristine land in Wanaka, where he built a complex with capacity to house 300 people in mostly underground facilities. Construction documents, obtained after a legal battle for transparency, reveal disturbing features: atmospheric filtration systems capable of protecting against engineered biological agents, autonomous power generators with fuel for decades, and, most significantly, medical facilities that include advanced cryogenic equipment. What do these technology titans anticipate that the rest of humanity does not know? The technological sophistication of these private bunkers frequently surpasses government military installations. The company Rising S, a leader in the luxury bunker construction sector, confirms a 2,000% increase in orders for its most expensive units, above $8 million, since 2015. The Aristocrat model, its premium product, includes hydroponic systems capable of producing food indefinitely, nuclear osmosis water purification, geothermal generators, and small hospital medical capacity. More revealing is the communication component. These structures are equipped with independent satellite internet systems and encrypted quantum communication networks linked to secure servers in Switzerland and Iceland. In 2019, 3 technology sector billionaires jointly contracted the development of a proprietary system called ContinuityNet, a parallel internet designed to remain functional even after complete collapse of conventional global infrastructure. What use would such a system have if there were no expectation that other similar bunkers would remain operational? The most alarming trend is the progressive integration of these private refuges into a cohesive network. Detailed journalistic investigations revealed that between 2017 and 2023, at least 32 billionaire bunkers established shared protocols of communication and resources, effectively creating a parallel underground society ready for activation. Documents leaked from an exclusive conference in Jackson Hole in 2021 detailed discussions about post-transition governance and optimized civilizational reconstruction, euphemistic terms for the establishment of new social models after the collapse of current institutions. Particularly disturbing was the documented debate about which knowledge and skills would be essential for preservation, and which would be considered dispensable in limited resource scenarios. Who gave these individuals, united only by their extreme wealth, the right to decide which elements of human civilization would deserve to survive? The anthropological implications of these planned underground communities are profound. Analyses of architectural plans and planning documents reveal rigorously codified social hierarchies. Residential areas stratified by functional value of the occupant, decision-making systems that prioritize technical expertise over humanistic considerations, and notable absence of spaces for traditional religious or cultural practices. In contrast, there is a disproportionate emphasis on digital data preservation facilities, genetic engineering laboratories, and advanced artificial intelligence systems. Sociologist Dr. Marcus Henfield, who studied these projects before his death under controversial circumstances in 2022, concluded that they represented deliberate attempts to fundamentally redesign human social organization under strict technocratic principles. These would not be merely survival structures, but incubators for a specific and unelected vision of civilizational future. The psychological aspect behind this trend is rarely examined, but reveals deeply disturbing motivations. Interviews with private bunker designers and security consultants for the ultra-rich describe a phenomenon called survivor god syndrome. The belief that those with resources to build such refuges have not only the right, but the moral duty to survive and guide reconstruction after global catastrophes. This mentality is fueled by a growing neo-feudalist philosophy among certain technological elites, who see human history as inevitable cycles of collapse and rebirth, where only the prepared visionaries emerge to lead. Particularly revealing was the confession of an anonymous technology billionaire to a journalist. "We are not just building to survive, we are building to govern what comes after." Would this not be merely prudent preparation, but strategic positioning to exercise disproportionate control over humanity's future? The technical specifications of these bunkers reveal specific concerns that contradict public narratives about civilizational risks. While officially expressing concerns about nuclear instability or climate changes, the implemented defensive systems show disproportionate emphasis on protection against engineered biological threats and coordinated social collapse scenarios. Particularly notable is the universal presence of quantum secure rooms, spaces shielded against any form of electronic or energy surveillance, typically used for absolutely critical communications. Security specialist Dr. Harland Reich, who consulted for 3 of these projects before becoming a whistleblower, revealed that these bunkers follow specifications derived from classified modeling developed by private think tanks such as the Atlantic Council and the Group of 30 organizations known for their connections with intelligence agencies and global financial institutions. What do these models predict that justifies such a level of secretive preparation? The financing of these projects reveals another disturbing dimension: the active participation of large financial institutions. Internal documents leaked from the investment bank Goldman Sachs reveal the existence of a specialized service called continuity consulting, offered exclusively to clients with assets exceeding $500 million, which provides guidance in building integrated survival infrastructures. Even more revealing was the discovery that since 2017, certain ultra-exclusive hedge funds began including biological continuity infrastructure as an asset class in very high-value portfolios. The Bank for International Settlements, BIS, often called the Central Bank of Central Banks, maintains a working group called the Post-Disruption Financial Resilience Committee that secretly coordinates preparations among global financial institutions for systemic collapse scenarios. Would this behavior not be evidence that those who control global financial systems anticipate and possibly plan a civilizational Great Reset? The selection of personnel for these private bunkers follows deeply disturbing criteria. Specialized agencies such as Strategic Resources Group and Continuity Personnel identify and recruit individuals with skills considered critical for reconstruction, often without revealing the final purpose of their hiring. Doctors, engineers, hydroponic farmers, and security specialists sign contracts with activation clauses that obligate them to report to specific locations upon certain predefined triggers. Even more disturbing are the genetic and medical requirements imposed. Immunological compatibility profiles, complete genomic sequencing, and even reproductive considerations enter the selection criteria. In 2022, a lawsuit filed by a contracted and subsequently rejected doctor revealed requirements for optimized genetic diversity and favorable epigenetic profile, eugenesis terminology disguised in modern scientific language. Are we witnessing not just preparations for survival, but attempts at population engineering for a post-collapse society? The contrast between these luxurious preparations and the absence of comparable planning for general populations is perhaps the most revealing aspect of this situation. While governments systematically reduce funds for civil preparation and disaster response, billionaires collectively invest more than $300 billion in private survival infrastructure. More disturbing still, many of these same individuals publicly minimize existential threats such as catastrophic climate change or engineered pandemic risks, while privately building elaborate refuges against precisely these scenarios. A particularly revealing document, originated from a private continuity planning conference in 2020, explicitly discussed surplus population management and vital resource rationing as post-disruption inevitabilities, essentially debating which populations would be sacrificable in extreme scarcity scenarios. Would this not be the most fundamental form of moral hypocrisy? Publicly denying imminent crises while secretly preparing not only to survive, but to prosper amid global collapse? Beyond the billionaire bunkers and official military installations, there is a third fundamental component in this global underground network: the government continuity structures administered by civilian agencies such as FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, in the United States and their international counterparts. Starting in 2007, a series of extraordinary document leaks began to reveal a government preparation program whose scale and scope surpass any publicly offered explanation. The Rex 84 documents, partially declassified after decades of FOIA requests, reveal meticulous plans not only for conventional disaster management, but for scenarios of prolonged social disruption and emergency jurisdictional reorganization. Euphemisms for the effective suspension of constitutional order and implementation of highly centralized forms of government in times of crisis. The architectural structure of FEMA facilities reveals disturbing patterns when analyzed comparatively. Independent investigations have identified more than 200 facilities in American territory with identical characteristics: heavily reinforced construction, redundant energy and water systems, communication capacity independent of conventional infrastructure, and, most significantly, modular design that allows rapid conversion between different functions. Particularly revealing was the leak of Continuity Architectural Guidelines in 2014, a technical document intended for contractors that specifies requirements for population processing facilities capable of rapidly converting between functions of humanitarian assistance, medical triage, and prolonged administrative detention. Why would humanitarian aid facilities need identical features to high-security detention centers? The extent of FEMA's underground infrastructure remains one of the best-kept secrets of the American government, but fragmentary evidence suggests a vast network. The Continuity of Operations program, with an estimated classified annual budget of $9 billion, maintains at least 12 main underground facilities connected by dedicated transportation systems. The best known of these, Mount Weather in Virginia, represents only the visible surface of a much more extensive system. Former employees report the existence of successively deeper levels with color designations, where only the green level is officially recognized. Budget documents leaked in 2019 reveal massive expenditures on life support systems for the enigmatic indigo and violet levels, areas whose existence is officially denied, but which apparently consume 40% of the agency's total infrastructure budget. What could justify such investment in facilities whose very existence is denied? The relationship between FEMA and private corporations raises even more disturbing questions about who really controls these preparations for end-of-the-world scenarios. Government contracts reveal that companies such as Halliburton, Raytheon, and subsidiaries of the Blackwater Group, now Academy, have received billions to build and equip dual-purpose facilities, ostensibly for disaster management, but with capabilities far beyond simple humanitarian aid. Particularly alarming is the discovery that operational control of these facilities during Level 1 emergencies would be transferred to private entities under continuity management agreements that superimpose corporate authority over the conventional governmental chain of command. An internal memo leaked in 2017 explicitly discusses the privatization of essential government functions as a strategy for operational continuity in scenarios of institutional collapse. Are we witnessing not just preparation for disasters, but the planned transfer of governmental authority to private hands during future crises? The simulation exercises conducted by FEMA since 2010 reveal specific concerns that dramatically contradict public narratives about civilizational risks. The Gotham Shield exercise of 2017, officially described as preparation for terrorist attacks, included classified components focused on management of massive population migrations and implementation of post-event special economic zones. Even more revealing was the Black Winter Project of 2019 to 2020, a multi-agency simulation of a global pandemic that, disturbingly, preceded the emergence of COVID-19 by months. Leaked documents from this operation show that the tested scenarios were not just medical, but included extensive modeling of timely social restructurings and accelerated implementation of digital governance systems, precisely the transformations that later occurred during the real pandemic. Is it coincidence that disaster preparation exercises frequently seem to anticipate with disturbing precision the very events for which they supposedly prepare? The territorial mapping carried out by FEMA for contingency planning represents another deeply disturbing element of this puzzle. Since 2005, the agency has implemented a territorial zoning program that divides the United States into 10 administrative regions, each with its own independent chain of command and dedicated underground facilities. Executive Order 13603, discreetly signed in 2012, grants unprecedented authority for resource requisition, population relocation, and complete economic reorganization during vaguely defined national emergencies, effectively establishing the legal framework for a centralized technocratic state activated during crises. More disturbing is the discovery of internal documents mapping population viability zones and restricted access territories for post-collapse scenarios, essentially predetermining which regions would receive limited resources and which would be abandoned. Who decides which populations deserve salvation and which would be considered dispensable in these calculated equations of survival? The biological storage facilities maintained by FEMA in conjunction with the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, raise even more sinister questions. Ostensibly established for response to natural outbreaks, these facilities maintain capabilities that go far beyond simple pathogen containment. The biological resilience centers, as they are officially designated, include extensive genetic research laboratories, industrial-scale vaccine production facilities, and, more disturbingly, enormous repositories of population biometric data. Former contractors reveal that since 2016, these facilities have implemented digital biobank technology, the capacity to digitally store and replicate complete human genetic sequences. A potential application never publicly discussed: the capacity to reconstruct genetically optimized human populations after mass extinction events. Are we witnessing preparations not just for disaster management, but for fundamental re-engineering of the human species itself? The parallel communication network developed for emergency scenarios reveals another aspect of these secret preparations. Beyond the known emergency alert systems, leaked documents reveal the existence of a completely separate communication infrastructure called backbone continuum. This system, physically isolated from the public internet and conventional telephone networks, connects underground government facilities, certain private bunkers, and selected military installations through underground fiber optic cables, encrypted quantum communication, and dedicated satellite links. Particularly notable. Since 2018, selected corporations in the banking, pharmaceutical, and technology sectors have been integrated into the system, receiving communication terminals that would remain functional even after complete collapse of conventional infrastructure. Why would specific private entities receive privileged access to critical government communication systems designed to survive the apocalypse? The financial aspects of FEMA's preparations raise even deeper questions about hidden government priorities. While budgets for civil infrastructure, public health, and education face constant cuts, billions of dollars flow annually to classified government continuity projects. Analyses of federal budgets identify more than $113 billion since 2010 allocated for preparation for low-probability and high-impact events, a category that includes everything from nuclear war to asteroid impacts. Particularly revealing. Since 2016, a growing portion of this funding flows through public-private partnerships where selected corporations receive massive government funds to develop critical resilience capabilities that remain under corporate, not public, control. Internal documents leaked from the Treasury Department explicitly discuss the strategic transfer of essential assets to non-governmental entities as a measure for preservation of critical functionalities regardless of socio-political turbulence. Are we witnessing not just prudent preparation for disasters, but the deliberate creation of post-governmental structures controlled by corporate and financial elites? Perhaps the most revealing aspect of the leaked FEMA documents is the development of selection criteria for access to continuity facilities during extreme crises. The Noah's Ladder Protocol, partially exposed through Freedom of Information lawsuits, establishes an explicit hierarchy of population prioritization based on criteria such as functional value, skill essentiality, and reproductive viability. More disturbingly, since 2014, these protocols incorporate data from population genomic sequencing and behavioral predictive modeling, apparently derived from commercial and governmental DNA and social media databases. Former agency analysts describe an automated scoring system that essentially predetermines which segments of the population would be prioritized for protection in limited resource scenarios. An algorithm that literally decides who lives and who dies on a scale of millions. Who programmed these algorithms, and with what ethical criteria? What vision of future humanity is being coded in these cold equations of selective survival? The final and perhaps most sinister element of these government preparations is the growing convergence between population control technologies and emergency management systems. Since 2018, FEMA simulation exercises routinely incorporate massive digital surveillance technologies, social credit systems inspired by the Chinese model, and central bank digital currencies with the true significance of global underground facilities can only be understood when we realize they are not isolated projects, but interconnected nodes of a network meticulously planned over decades. Documents filtered from the Club of Rome and the Trilateral Commission, groups often associated with globalist planning, reveal discussions since the 1970s about the inevitable civilizational transition and the need to create continuity arcs to preserve knowledge, technology, and selected genetic lineages. The Kissinger Memorandum of 1974, partially declassified in 2014, already established the need for stratified preservation facilities that transcended national borders and operated under supranational authority. What we witness today with Denver, Cheyenne Mountain, Svalbard, and private bunkers is not historical coincidence, but the systematic materialization of a plan architected for decades, now in its final phases of implementation before a catalyzing event that its planners seem to not only anticipate, but possibly orchestrate. The technological convergence implemented in these structures points to capabilities that transcend simple survival. Technical analyses of installed systems reveal three critical capabilities universally present: advanced genetic preservation, human and non-human, autonomous superintelligent artificial intelligence, and planetary engineering technologies. Former contractors of Raytheon and Palantir confirmed the development of integrated systems called continuity governors, essentially AIs designed to assume governmental functions in scenarios where conventional human leadership would be unfeasible. More disturbing are the leaked documents from the Prometheus project, which detail research in Earth terraforming technologies, methods to deliberately modify the atmosphere, hydrology, and geology of entire regions. What kind of civilizational reconstruction would require the capacity to fundamentally redesign the very planetary systems that sustain life? The philosophical aspect behind these preparations reveals a deeply disturbing worldview. Internal communications between architects of these structures, obtained through whistleblowers and leaks, reveal an ideology that some researchers have termed directed catastrophic evolutionism, the notion that periodic civilizational collapses are not only inevitable but necessary for humanity's evolutionary advancement. Strategic planning documents repeatedly refer to beneficial population bottlenecks and necessary evolutionary realignments, euphemisms for catastrophic population reduction followed by directed reconstruction. Particularly revealing was the discovery of the Phoenix Imperative essay circulated among high executives of 3 global foundations in 2019, which explicitly argued that the continuity of the entire current human population is incompatible with sustainable civilizational advancement, and that significant reduction followed by guided restructuring represents the only viable trajectory. Who conferred upon these self-proclaimed architects of the future the right to determine which portion of humanity deserves to continue existing? The accelerated chronology of construction of these structures since 2010 suggests advanced knowledge of imminent events. Analysis of secret budget allocations reveals a clear pattern. Investments in government underground facilities increased 440% between 2012 and 2022, with dramatic intensification after closed meetings between global central bank leaders in 2016 and 2019. Simultaneously, corporate acquisitions of remote lands with geological characteristics favorable to underground construction grew 700%, often followed by extraordinary access restrictions and intensified surveillance. The most revealing fact is the synchronization of these activities with changes in insurance policies. Since 2017, global reinsurers such as Munich Re and Swiss Re have silently implemented exclusions for specific scenarios in high-value policies, categorized as systemic discontinuity events, effectively refusing to cover precisely the types of catastrophes against which these underground facilities would protect. What information do these institutions share internally about imminent risks that remain hidden from the public? The military dimension of these preparations transcends conventional defenses. Since 2015, global defense agencies have implemented what internal documents call the ARC protocol, autonomous weapon systems specifically designed to protect continuity facilities against unauthorized access in scenarios of social collapse. Most disturbing are the access criteria coded in these systems. Facial and genetic recognition algorithms programmed to identify individuals with prior authorization, while automatically determining that any other human represents an eliminable threat. In 2019, a leaked Northrop Grumman contract revealed the development of autonomous perimeter systems for underground facilities that would operate indefinitely without human supervision, using AI to determine which humans would have permission to live and which would be eliminated as threats. Even more revealing, these systems include civilizational reboot protocols, programmed guidelines for social reorganization after prolonged periods of isolation. Would we not be witnessing not just preparations for survival, but the algorithmic coding of a new social order designed without democratic consent? The financial component of this underground network reveals disturbing connections with global economic transformations. Since 2014, central banks have drastically accelerated the development of digital currencies, CBDCs, apparently designed to completely replace physical money. What few critically analyze is the technical architecture of these systems. All incorporate continuity keys, mechanisms that would allow instantaneous transfer of monetary control to specific servers located in strategic underground facilities. The Bank for International Settlements has secretly established the Janus Protocol, a complete parallel financial system, maintained in a latent state, designed for immediate activation after disruption of the current system. This system includes predetermined algorithmic redistribution of resources based on criteria of post-transition functional value of participants. Would we be observing not just prudent contingency, but active preparations for controlled transition to a fundamentally redesigned financial system where algorithms would determine human value and access to resources? The informational dimension of these preparations is equally revealing. Since 2018, global technology corporations have secretly built what internal documents call the secondary backbone, a parallel internet with separate physical infrastructure, exclusively connecting governmental and private continuity facilities. Even more disturbing, companies such as Google, Microsoft, and Palantir are jointly developing systems called legacy archives, essentially complete digital libraries of human civilization, but with algorithmic filtering determining which knowledge, cultures, and perspectives are considered essential for preservation versus dispensable in the context of limited resources. Leaked documents from the 2021 Tech Summit Antarctica reveal explicit discussions about optimized historical curation, effectively planning which aspects of our history, art, cultures, and knowledge would deserve to survive in a post-collapse reconstruction scenario. Who appointed these self-selected archivists as the final curators of human heritage? The biological aspect of these preparations suggests plans for fundamental modification of the human species itself. Advanced biotechnology laboratories in the Cheyenne mountain facilities and in selected private bunkers conduct research on next-generation CRISPR technologies, epigenetic editing, and brain-machine interfaces that transcend therapeutic purposes. Leaked documents from the classified Lamarck project explicitly describe protocols for directed genetic optimization in a reduced human population, with objectives such as increased resistance to pathogens, elevated radiation tolerance, and more efficient metabolic utilization of limited resources. Even more disturbing was the discovery that genetic samples are systematically collected from individuals in positions of global influence, politicians, scientists, cultural leaders, and stored in these facilities with future cloning capability. Would we be witnessing preparations not just to preserve humanity as we know it, but to fundamentally redesign it according to specific visions of directed evolutionary enhancement? The governance structures planned for these underground communities reveal conscious abandonment of democratic principles. Leaked planning documents detail rigid technocratic systems where decision-making authority is determined exclusively by technical expertise, ownership of critical resources, or position in predetermined hierarchies. Particularly revealing was the Governance Framework After Transition document, circulated among selected members of the World Economic Forum in 2020, which explicitly argues against inefficiencies inherent to representative systems in favor of metrics-driven administration in post-collapse scenarios. Even more disturbing is the social stratification system coded in these plans. Division of the surviving population into functional levels, with differentiated access to resources, knowledge, and decision-making autonomy. Would this not be the deliberate reintroduction of a neo-feudal system, disguised under rhetoric of managerial efficiency and optimized allocation of scarce resources? The temporal convergence of these global preparations points to an anticipated event horizon. Analyses of contracts, acquisitions, and construction timelines reveal a notable pattern. Most strategic underground facilities are scheduled for total completion between 2024 and 2026, with activation protocols established for immediate implementation after finalization. Simultaneously, a drastic acceleration is observed in specific technologies. Advanced automation, autonomous artificial intelligence, algorithmic governance systems, and synthetic biotechnology. Precisely the tools necessary to establish a fundamentally reorganized society with drastically reduced human population. Former national security consultants warn that this convergence of preparations does not represent mere precaution against hypothetical risk, but strategic positioning for an event or sequence of events already anticipated with high degree of certainty by those with access to advanced modeling and privileged intelligence. The central question, therefore, is not whether these underground facilities will be used, but how much time remains until their activation, and whether the catalyzing event that will justify their use will be genuinely accidental or a calculated part of a larger plan for a civilizational Great Reset. The knowledge you have acquired here represents only the beginning of a broader awakening. The evidence is all around us, in symbols hidden in plain sight, in inexplicable patterns of underground development, in contradictions between public discourses and secret preparations. True power does not reside in passive acceptance of official narratives, but in the courage to question, investigate, and connect dots deliberately obscured. The question that remains is not whether these underground structures exist or what their true purpose is, but how we will respond as a society upon realizing that our future is being redesigned without our knowledge or consent. If you are interested in exploring more about spirituality, I have specially selected for you some videos filled with profound knowledge and fascinating discoveries that you will love. Just click on one of them. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-discovery and spiritual learning. Your commitment to knowledge is the first step to transform your reality.